this from Patrick. I had written to Patrick as a kid. I think I was about 10 years old. Well, 1957 was when it started, and I was 10 years old. And I wrote to Patrick, as kids do, strangely enough, not to ask him about astronomy, but to ask him what the piece of music was that introduced his program. And sure enough, Patrick sent me a hand-typed answer telling me what it was. It was Belly song by Sibelius. And he was my hero. I used to beg to be allowed to stay up and see the program, which was on quite late. And years and years later, because of Patrick, I had this idea that I wanted to be an astronomer. And I ended up in the infrared astronomy department at Imperial College. And one day, who should visit but Patrick Moore? And I think I was quite shy at the time. I probably shook his hand and said hello, but that was about it, because I was very insignificant. The way that I became friends with Patrick was a completely different route. A friend of mine, Dirk Max, who's here tonight, is a great director and producer of radio shows, and he was producing Patrick at the time. Patrick was playing himself in a radio drama, and I was supplying some music at that time. And Dirk said that you two have to meet Patrick, because you speak the language, and you find the same things funny, you find the same things interesting. So we met, and it was an unforgettable, forgive me if it gets too long, but we went down, Dirk and I, and Patrick, of course, was incredibly welcoming. We did the airlock thing, he invited us in, we drank, of course, you had to drink with Patrick. And we talked about various things. He took us out, it was a nice evening, he took us out to see Saturn, his 15-inch telescope, which was amazing. And then he said, what else would you like to see? I said, can I see the Andromeda Nebula? He went, oh God, because that was difficult at the time. Patrick had a delightful habit of being very irascible. I think most of us knew him being stubborn. I think it was one of his great features. Many times, I mean, it became a regular thing for us to go around his house, and we wrote books together, me and Chris Lintott. That's the way it evolved. The three of us wrote Bang, and then we wrote The Cosmic Tourist after that. And for many, many days and nights, we sat there playing around, drinking, eating, and doing a bit of work now and again. And normally, as time went on, Patrick would reach a point where he would either get bored, because he'd already written it in his mind, or else he just sort of had enough, and he would nod off. And we'd sort of carry on politely getting on with our things, and then some people go, well, the paragraph 3 is absolutely impossible. You realise that even though he'd been asleep, he was still keeping up. And then, of course, the cat would disappear. This is a regular thing. Ptolemy, who was a great inspiration for Patrick, I think Patrick loved his cats better than anybody in the whole world. And Ptolemy and Jeannie, of course, were his last companions. Ptolemy was always there, sitting on the papers as we were writing, and then he would disappear, and Patrick would go, where's Ptolemy? And it would be panic, because if we couldn't find him, nothing could be done. We can't possibly proceed if we can't find Ptolemy. So we'd be out in the garden with torches, looking under the fences. We never ever found Ptolemy, because he was always hiding indoors somewhere. Very funny. And if we're talking about reminiscences, I actually love the times when Patrick lost it. You know, we would be in the middle of writing, it would take us a while to get to the serious matter of writing, and suddenly the phone would go, and you'd go, oh, damn! Bloody phone! Turn into a drinking, and it would be late at night and we would still be drinking and chatting. So many things I could say about Patrick, but I would like to thank him publicly, really, because he turned my life around more than once. As a kid, he made me want to look up to the stars. He made me want to understand why human beings are here. As a friend later on, he turned me around again, because I'd gone deeply into the land of being a musician, and I didn't think I had the capability to be an astronomer anymore. He said, nonsense, nonsense, you can do your PhD. And I returned and did my PhD, really inspired by Patrick. And Patrick turned my life around in other ways too, because he was an absolutely passionate animal lover. And we kind of fed off each other in a sense, but I discovered after I'd been with him a while that he had been very much instrumental in bringing the Hunting Act into being. There's a wonderful clip on YouTube, you have to check it out. If you Google Patrick Moore and Theresa May, it's a classic. And she attempts to justify fox hunting, and Patrick utterly destroys her. She goes off in high dudgeon. She's trying to get us out of human rights at the moment, isn't it? Wonderful. I'm still supporting fox hunting, but you should see the programme on Google. So Patrick, to me, was a man of immense talent, immense generosity, as we've heard, but also had an exceptional vision. And he reinforced my feelings that human beings have become dominant on this planet, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they're the most important species on the planet. And I'm sure that Patrick absolutely thought that cats were more important. And I have to, in some ways, agree with him. And the idea that he named his cat Ptolemy after the great Ptolemy, of course, the great Greco-Roman, who expounded his theory of the universe about a century AD. His theory of the universe was that the Earth was at the centre and everything else went around it. That theory was in common use and belief for 1,000 years before Galileo actually managed to disprove it. And I remember having a great conversation with Patrick about the fact that how odd it was that we now know that human beings are a tiny species on a tiny planet going around a very ordinary sun in a darkish corner of an ordinary galaxy, and there are billions of galaxies. And he said, but humans still think that they're the most important thing in the universe. And that to me is a great insight. And Patrick gave us a lot of things, but I think as an astronomer, as a musician, I have to say he didn't really like my music, so I like to But he said, you mustn't take it personally, because I don't like anything written after 1890. I did get him to see We Were Lucky though, and he had a nice time. He signed autographs and was such a great presence there. I lost my thread. All I want to say is thank you, Patrick. We love you, and I'm happy to be part of this gathering and to share his birthday with you.